Okay, good evening or afternoon. It is 3 o'clock in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and we are lucky to have someone from Australia here. So hello tomorrow morning, and welcome everybody to Renee Gregorio's event. Renee Gregorio is from Boston, and she's been in New Mexico since 1985. Her first home was in Taos, getting a master's from Antioch University in London. She has been published many volumes of poem over the past period of time being here, and she's been a freelance literary editor, a proofreader, a drafter, a state legislator, taken people to travel and interact with words and poetry on those events. And she and her husband John lead those. And with that, I would like to I will mute everybody, and Renee, I will hand it over to you. Let's see. Oops. Let me see.
There, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you, Wyatt. And thank you to Bookworks. I didn't realize you were one of the owners, so that's great to meet you. And I wanted to thank Amanda also, who helped to set the reading up, and Shelley for your support. Like as I said to Shelley earlier, I love her backdrop. So her backdrop is the book I'm going to be reading from, which is, I'll hold it up for you to get a closer look to. Yeah, it's called Abyss and Bridge, and it was published recently by Three Taos Press. And the publisher, Andrea Watson, I want to thank her, and also the designer, Leslie Cox. And because really it's quite an amazing production. And I so appreciate that as a poet, to have your poems on a page in a really readable, inviting format. So thank you, everybody. The cover is a watercolor by the Bolinas artist, Arthur Okamura. And I'm excited to have that too. So beautiful. So just as a way of introduction, as I was thinking about reading poems today from Abyss and Bridge, in such a ravaged world that we're in, you know, I realized that I can go into a place of resignation and despair and say, so what? I'm going to be reading poems, or so what poems, right? And I'm not wanting to stay in that state, but to acknowledge that it comes up, right? And instead, you know, right beside that, I also feel we need poems now more, probably more than ever. And why I say that is really for us to be able to feel ourselves more, to be able to feel each other more, to reach across difference in whatever way we can do that, all feel really crucial in this world. So what I'm hoping is that the reverence that these poems show for the world, both for the world and for its humans, can serve as a balm for you. And I really offer them as a way to reach across that difference that we can sometimes feel, and to travel to places both within ourselves and outside of ourselves to really embrace that sense of awe and beauty that we can feel when we do that. And also the sense that we can find home wherever we are. So with that, I'm just going to launch into reading you some poems from Abyss and Bridge. The Grace of Now. Sometimes seasons change in a whirl of wind, then smoke into being. Sometimes we turn a corner only to meet ourselves face to face. If there's trembling to be had, have it. If falling is the only way to touch the ground, surrender to what's startling and right. Fierce light rising over dense mountain, the sound of water falling on stone, and this body, always this body, with its back of grief and front of desire. What would it be like to stay with yourself? Not ahead as if running for a bus, not behind as if left on the platform by departing train, just here, just now, in this warm, still air, earth moistened by yesterday's brief rain. Know that. Claim what is good. Then get up. Take your place in this world. In this poem, which is called This Singing, there's a reference to Hafiz, and Hafiz was a Persian poet from the 14th century, also a Sufi master. This singing, nothing but divine movement, says Hafiz. I'm trying to find you, the spiral in my blood. I overturn each rock in the garden, looking, each stone its own life pulsing in my bare hands. I do not think. I do not think for a minute that any God is watching, but I feel the gods watching. Bees are overtaking the woodbine. Mockingbirds sing the song of the other. Every day, a new seed sprouts. When the wind blows, I hear the voices of my dead. Each stone its own beauty. I hold the spotted one, the red sandstone, black basalt. Each one pressed to my cheek is a universe holding space between heaven and earth. But who is God? The one inside singing out. So something that a lot of these poems are concerned with travel, with being in all kinds of places around the world and with meeting people there and with how that affects both my internal landscape and also creates dialogue, and how important that has felt for many years as John and I have traveled. And also something as introduction to this next poem, something I realized when I was preparing for this reading is that sometimes going out into these unknown places does nothing but bring us right back to our origins. So this poem is called Threads. I pull the gray one out from an old square cookie tin filled with my grandmother's spools to find her needle still embedded there, thread looped neatly through the eye. I grasp the needle between thumb and forefinger, begin to hem a pair of gray pants my mother bought me, thinking I wouldn't have bought them for myself, too expensive. And is this what mothers are for? Mine's always been that way, giving me more than I can give myself. As I methodically loop the needle through the wool, stitch after stitch, I see my grandmother at her sewing machine in the corner of the bedroom and recall, too, my mother's aversion to sewing anything at all, even a hem. I want to tell them both of the textile route I followed in northern Thailand, threading my way to a village where a woman took me by the hand when she could have ignored me, led me across the street to the proper bus stop. I'd been standing in the wrong place. She closed up her roadside stand, ran across the busy street, purse in hand, and grabbed me, leading the way down the road. It mattered to her that I find my way. I'm sewing this hem. The threads of my grandmother fill my fingertips, stitch my mother's generosity to heart, where I know they taught me to buy the best threads, that it matters how we adorn our bodies. I'm thinking of the way we carry on and what we carry. It's good to see you all popping in, but I'm going to change my view so I won't see as much popping. Okay, good. This next poem is called Coins of Light, and I feel like it needs a little introduction. It's written about a place in Chiapas called Acteal, and it's the site of a massacre that occurred in the late 90s by the Mexican paramilitary. And Sean and I visited the site with students and several years ago, and it was just heart-wrenching, to say the least. And this poem speaks of being there and standing on that land and in this particular chapel. Coins of light. Dawn and dusk exist simultaneously in a village called Acteal, where a white flag with thick blue letters spells pause, where a monument erected at the village entrance is named the Pillar of Shame. Maria invites us into the church, a thick planked wooden hut with a roof of tin, to tell us her story. She welcomes us into the humble building, her face's brightness cut off prematurely, like a fruit beaten from its place on a tree before it ripens. 45 of her people were murdered here by the paramilitary, parents, sisters, brothers, uncles, and aunts among the massacred. Soy soltera, she says, I am alone. As her eyes become enlarged, wet, she points to the bullet holes in the tin roof, to the Virgin in her glass box on the altar, whose body is still slumped over. Sunlight blasts through each hole, hitting the chest of the fallen Virgin with a circle of golden light. As Maria's voice shakes, every hole elicits a coin of light that lands on the dirt floor. Circles of light that mark each shot heard that day nearly 10 years ago, and they were only praying there. I did find out recently that there's been a little bit of justice in terms of Acteal, which is in July of 2020. The Mexican government admitted that they wanted to repair the damage. And then a few months after that, I think the Home Secretary of Mexico, whatever he's called there, did admit responsibility for the massacre. Probably too little, too late, but a bit anyway. So this is quite a turn, I would say, but we're gonna head to Sicily. And I do have Sicilian heritage. My grandfather was Sicilian. And when I traveled there, it was so remarkable how much I felt at home and how I felt like I already knew the place. I recognized something in myself in that landscape. And it was really palpable, that sense of familiarity. And the poem is called Sicilian Home. There's lots of, well, not lots, but several Italian words in here that are actually pretty, mostly to do with food. So pomodoro, tomato, pasticcini, pastries, mandorla is almond. So I think the rest is evident. Sicilian home. The words, as much as anything else, brought me home. The sound of vowels, the exaggeration of sound, the way they felt in my mouth, the enunciation, birra, gelateria, Maurizio. All I had ever known, then more. Not just pasta, but breadcrumbs too. Not just any pomodoro, but those small, sweet bursts from Pachino. Not a few mediocre olives, but fistfuls of brined fruit. Not only a glass or two of vino rosso, but liters of bright complexity. So much I seem to have already tasted. Fresh ricotta filling breakfast rolls and cannoli shells. Pasticcini made of mandorla. The kind of place that made me want to sketch it, even though I can't draw. Background of church bells everywhere. A lone seagull on the stone cross above Piazza Sant'Andrea. Crumbling churches alive with oratorios, intricate carvings of cherubs, even statues of the virtues were voluptuous. Marble inlay, spiraled columns, lavish mosaics at La Materana. So many people I already seem to know. The Italian actor who pulled me into him and smiled. The nun at Santo Spirito who effervesced feistiness behind her black rimmed glasses. The woman who, when I said my grandfather was Sicilian, ran her fingers along her inner wrist's pulse point. This place is in your blood already, she said. It lives there, and now you see it. Meandering the sapphire sea's path in Ortigia, I joined the grace of the city, even under the statue of Santa Lucia, with a sword through her neck and her platter full of eyeballs. Grace in waiting and not being at the center of anything. Remember in Caltagirone how the man with a bandaged hand still spoke by gesturing with that hand. When we traveled to Greece, to Crete, and I went into a shop and met these two young women who were the shopkeepers, and I asked them their names, and one of them was Panayota, which I had never heard, but I guess it's a common name in Greece, and the other Olympia. So Panayota derives from Panagia, which is the Virgin Mary. So it's a very, it's a big name there. And this poem is about that in some ways, about meeting them and how we can claim our names or not. The shopkeepers' names. In a small shop in Hanya, I meet two young shopkeepers with hallucinogenic names. One tells me everything's made in Greece as she leads me around the store with her vibrancy. The other remarks that in the current economy, women are the first to go. In the world of work, the first to be seen as unnecessary. My shopkeepers do not offer their names until asked. Stunned by the power they evoke, I ask further. What might it mean to live into those names? They laugh, unaware of their shining. Oh, Panayota, look at all the clothes you tempted me with. I bought more than I needed in the glow of your generous attention, bought your charm and laughter, your warmth. Panayota, Panayia, all holy one. I visit your chapels everywhere on Crete, each dedicated to your namesake. O Olympia, sanctuary of ancient Greece, classic site of the first Olympic Games, in your Temenos, temple of Hera, temple of Zeus, altars of sacrifice. Olympia, Panayota, I remember you. And now I know that sometimes what's powerfully given, like our names, asks us to shed what's deeply held, our insignificance. This next poem is, we move to India. We're gonna get dizzy, I think, but it's called 12 Crop Circles, India. So it's in 12 parts and they're all short sections, short descriptive sections. And some of them take place on a train, some of them are in Old Delhi, Mumbai, in various temples that we had visited there. 1. From up here, what's down there looks so organized as water snakes through flat land into perfect irrigation circles. 2. A skinny man in a slender black canoe holds a long, thin stick, navigates a narrow canal. 3. A little boy's high-pitched wail erupts beside his father's accordion. The train car's itinerant musicians pass us, leaving the plea of their song. 4. 30 times a day for health, but I'm not a religious man, our neighbor on the train tells us. I pay attention, like a scientist, to how the blood flows, the body relaxes, the head quiets. You don't have to believe in our gods, just prostrate. Good advice. 5. The vendor with his vegetable packets has no children. Wife have problem, he says, dispensing his seeds. 6. So many blue houses in Bundi, we ask why. Blue because it's the cheapest dye. Blue because it repels mosquitoes, a practical and accidental beauty. 7. Beside the stench of urinals in front of his inviting smile, the chat man's cart gleams with rows of spiced crackers and peas stacked just right under the full moon. 8. Darjeeling, the pilgrim's cane doesn't reach the ground, but dangles in midair. He leans on it anyway. 9. A village boy in Orcha studies to be a sadhu, passes us trident in hand, afar away knowing, look in his eyes, bows his head, giving a priest's blessing as if he already knows how. 10. At the Jain temple on Malabar Hill, a sign reads, whilst taking photos, do not turn your back to the idols. 11. Jama Masjid, Old Delhi, climb the stairs to the tower, become the woman who cannot climb the stairs to the tower without a man to accompany her. 12. At Khajuraho, erotic coupling in sandstone, gestures of carved lovemaking. As one woman removes a thorn from her foot, another's voice declares, God does nothing until you ask. And I'll read two more poems. This one, beginning and ending at Ensuji, takes place in and around Kyoto in Japan. And we visited Japan right after the Fukushima nuclear disaster, literally like weeks after it. So there's that echo in here. Beginning and ending at Ensuji. If sunlight on moss brightens its green, if shade echoes the stone, if the ledge's perfect rectangle holds the garden, if the azalea blooms, if we stand in no one's shadow, if we sit in seiza, if metal pipes weren't rammed down the throat of Saigyo's well, if Mount Arashi were clear of debris, if we heard the bush warblers cry, if we could return every gratitude and kind, if we could move like the women in blue aprons in the grace of their paper making, if the intricately carved wooden figures at the four corners of the shrine protected us, if we could keep being fed by the sweet mochi, if we could navigate the rain, if beauty could overcome suffering, if the sea's water could be cleared of radiation, if the air stayed scented with prayer, if we could make a wish, ring the gong, wake up the gods, let the garden's order ripple out into this world. And the last poem I'll read is about the village I live in a sense. It's called El Rito. El Rito. This blazing sky revealed behind white curtains, this unnameable color between salmon and rust, with so much light behind it, I want to believe there's a doorway there. So thank you for being such great listeners, I think. It felt that way to me anyway.
If you'd like to
Thank
unmute.
you, Renee.
You're welcome.
Those are beautiful. Those are just lovely to hear.
Thanks, Cheryl.
Yes, it was a lovely way for the weekend to listen on a Sunday to you reading. Thank you.
Great.
I wish you could do this each week and read another 12 poems.
Yeah, let's have her do it.
Well, that's a possibility. I don't know about another 12 poems, but maybe there's something in that, right?
Yeah, oh, yes.
Maybe you could have a pop-up reading.
Right.
Mm.
Right.
I'm very fortunate that it's a beautiful start to my Monday morning.
Ah,
That must be Jackie speaking.
Absolutely. Oh, how could you tell?
Just because it's Monday morning, that's all.
Yeah, Renee, such great lines. I just jotted down a couple. Seasons smoke into being. I love that. I love that concept, and also this practical and accidental beauty. You're explaining why everything is blue. That was such a wonderful line, and all the good reasons for blue. Mosquitoes. Even got the mosquitoes. It's the cheapest one. So beautiful. It's such a wonderful line. And then your description of your grandmother's thimble in the thread, and then contrasting your mother who doesn't sew at all to your grandmother, and you picking it up. That was just
calling my mother up.
really, really great.
Good. Great.
Yes.
I remember when we were in that village in Bundi and everything was blue and it was beautiful, you know, and we're walking around going, well, wait a minute, why is everything blue? And expecting there to be an answer that was, you know, cosmic and mystical, right? No, it repels mosquitoes, it's cheap. And, yeah, it was good. Somebody's phone is ringing.
Yeah. So